Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on the two systems of European nightcrawler worms that have been working on a wool sweater for 99 days now. And I'll tell you, if it was cotton t-shirts, like I did not too long ago, I would say that by day 100 they were pretty much gone already. But the last time we checked in on these two systems 12 days ago, the wool sweater, which was actually cut in half and half of it went into each of these systems, the sweater was still holding up quite well, so I'm not sure what to expect, because these systems went up to day 182, at which point we decided it was time to convert them to what I refer to as fed foraging. That means I just don't add any new bedding. And then over the past 5 weeks, they've been fed foraging. And today, feeding number 20 is going to go in as just a no bedding, feeding only type check-in, see how the wool sweater is coming along. And today's feeding is going to be the 20th feeding. I think, did I mention that yet? There's a whole slew of stats. So 99 days, 217 is the age, 182 composting, 35 days fed foraging, feeding 20 after 12 days. I think we've covered all the bases. So let's get these systems up on the bench and get them fed. So with the aim of fed foraging being letting the worms break down residual bits of bedding that still remains, there's also the idea of giving them foods that for the most part will just vanish. So that's the reason I've got these. I'm not sure if these are cucumbers or Kirby's, but basically they look like cucumbers. They might be named something differently, technically speaking. And then here we've got some romaine lettuce that started going quite bad. And I've also got some coffee, all stuff that I assume is going to go pretty quickly. And, well, on the topic of going quickly, I guess I'm going to do my best to make this feeding go quickly, because after I get done feeding these wormies, I got to shoot over to my sister's house and go check in on their pooch and get that little girl fed as well. And I do want to leave here in about 10 or 15 minutes, so we're not going to dawdle. We're just going to get right into it. See how the sweater's holding up. It's definitely holding together quite well. One of the viewers commented on the video from the last check-in with these little guys on what the game plan would be with this sweater if it were going to require more time than what the system needs. Because if the system's going to kind of get to the finish line and have a bunch of castings that are ready to be harvested, but the sweater is still going, then as you can imagine, I'm not going to just abandon the test. We're going to keep it going and bring it with the worms to their new environment, should that be the next step. Unless, of course, maybe the wool is just the sort of thing that requires a lot of time to kind of warm up to the point where it can finally start breaking down, and then maybe it kicks into high gear and vanishes quickly. I really don't know. This is the first time I've ever tried composting wool in any of my worm bins. In the fabric category, I've done cotton a number of times, but wool, this is the first try. So you can see we've got a nice crowd of worms down here in bin number 1, and we've opened up a pretty good size spot into which today's feeding can go. As the temperatures start warming up now, we're still kind of in the middle of spring here in my region, and the weather's warming up, resulting in much less heat running and windows open. So the somewhat more damp and humid air is allowed to come into the house, combined with the fact that the heat's not running and drying the air all the time. And it's quite a big difference. Quite a big difference in terms of how much the dry air in the house that I have during the winter sucks moisture out of my worm bins versus how well the systems are able to hang on to their moisture once the furnace stops going. And it seems like I've hardly even used my water bottle lately. During the winter, it seemed like the water bottle was coming out all the time to try to compensate for systems losing their moisture to the air through evaporation. But more recently I've been noticing quite the opposite, where my systems seem like they're getting quite damp, almost to the point where they're muddy, and this is one of them, I think, that I'm starting to observe that sort of tendency in. And I do believe that I'm going to put the covers back on in such a way that it allows the systems to breathe a little bit better, possibly allowing for some moisture to escape through evaporation around the edges. And hopefully that'll help bring things back to the point where things are a little bit more flaky and not muddy. Because muddy systems to me seem like they just get so out of hand, and I don't want that, you know. I want my systems to have nice free-flowing material in them, and I think this is one of the systems where I'm going to have to sort of adapt to the changing seasons by giving the system a little bit of an opportunity to kick off some of its moisture content. So you saw me sprinkle in some white granular material, and that's pulverized eggshell. That's what I use as grit in my worm bin. Some people use sand, other people crush down eggshell. Not eggshell, eggshell is what I use. They crush the shells of crustaceans. But for me, eggs are just the thing that are always around, and I get the shells from my mom as well. So there's always a plentiful amount of eggshell around to be used as grit in my systems. And speaking of plentiful, geez Louise, look at all these springtails. I suppose that allowing the systems to breathe and air out and dry off a tad will also reduce the springtail numbers. Not to say that having springtails is any sort of an issue, because they're really just helpers in the system, helping to break down the materials. But I don't know, in a way I'd rather have fewer springtails, but you don't want to disparage them too much. In a way, they are letting me know that perhaps the moisture level is a bit higher than it needs to be. The worms clearly love it because they look very happy and healthy, lively, because worms definitely thrive in a nice damp environment. The reason for that is that they breathe through their skin, so for them a nice damp environment is favorable. Lets them take in a good bit of oxygen and remain happy and healthy. But the excess moisture starts to make me worry that I'm going to have an unmanageable system as we get closer to the point where I might want to start thinking about getting the worms to move out. And getting the worms to move out is also something that you could spur on by allowing the system to become a little bit drier, and then you can lure them to a particular section of the bin where you maintain a high degree of moisture, possibly in a horizontal migration feeding zone or something like that. And then it's pretty easy to get the worms to leave material that's in the process of getting drier and drier, because they can certainly sense that and they'll go looking for something a little bit more favorable. So look at that. That's another clue. Springtails, clumpiness, muddiness, stickiness, and material getting all over your gloves and not wanting to flake off. That's another clue right there. So that's it for our check-in with the now 217-day-old European nightcrawler systems, continuing to work on the wool. And if at some point we decide that they're going to have to get moved into a new home, then the wool will simply accompany them to that new space. And as you can see, I'm allowing the outer edges of these systems to be exposed to the air in the hopes that perhaps some of what feels to me like excess moisture might just evaporate and be lost. But I don't know. I guess we could always go to the next step of taking off the plastic covers, putting paper or something else on that allows for a little bit more moisture loss. I don't know, we'll play it by ear, but perhaps this is a good start to helping the systems dry off a bit. So I got a couple things to take care of getting cleaned up, put away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.